When I was a kid, my dad always said that he was born halfway between the St. Valentine's Day Massacre and the stock market crash. On July 17, 1929, James Douglas West was born in Redwood City, California, to Hazel and James West Sr. James Sr., a grocer hailing from Perth, Australia, snuck aboard a shipping vessel and arrived in San Francisco at the age of 14. Hazel was the mother of the two boys, as well as property manager for their sprawling Redwood City hillside, which included a separate residence where James' grandfather lived. David, her firstborn, was 10 years James Sr. Little Jamie, as he was often referred to as a child, inherited his family's entrepreneurial spirit and at age 7 opened his tiny stage theater.
Something did happen when we were in San Francisco in the middle of the run. I had a thing that I don't know how I got it started, but I would light cigarettes for people, the matchbook. And I did, and the matchbook blew up in my hand, and I got a big welt. Now, in the third act of the play, the boy dies, and he falls from a tree. And I do this huge fall from an enormous tree on the stage, climb up there and hang on, and then I'd drop, and I'd end up behind a fence where they had lots of mattresses. They had about 4 or 5 mattresses. I'd fall down. They thought, my God, I'll never be able to do it that night. I had an understudy. He was later the boy who played Tarzan's boy in the Johnny Weissmuller Tarzan pictures. Johnny Sheffield was there, and then he played in later years Zombo the Jungle Boy. Anyway, I know because I wrote the first one, and I never saw Johnny, but Johnny was my understudy, and his father was an English actor who played in butlers and things in movies for years. And I used to be kind of scared of him, because he was always looking for something to happen to me so Johnny could go on. And he'd have Johnny at the theater in costume every night, waiting for me. And he said, oh, he'll never, when he found out I had this big welt in my hand, he won't be able to do it. Johnny will have to go on tonight. I said, no, I can hang for one hand. No. So we came in about 6 o'clock, before they opened up. And I climbed up in the tree and I held on with one hand and then I dropped down. And so everybody knew that I was okay and I could do the performance. Apparently they didn't like Johnny's performance. But in San Francisco they have a thing called the Gary Society. And a child was only allowed to do 7 performances a week. And we were doing 8 because we had 2 matinees. So Johnny got to do 1 performance a week, I think Monday night or something like that. The director was very unhappy about it, didn't like it. Well, Black Jerk and my mother shared a house on the Sunset Strip for 20 years, actually where I grew up. It had been built as a house at Sunset and Harbor. Then it was made into a speakeasy in the 20s, and they built a huge room on the back for gambling. Then, after Prohibition ended, it became an after-hours club. Then it was raided by the sheriff. Every window and door was broken, And it was just a shell of a house. It sat there for 5 years. And my mother and Blanche took a lease on it for 20 years at $50 a month. In that area, we remodeled it and made it into a show place, and that's where I grew
I
up.
love the mountains, Papa. Not so much in your mouth at once, Victor.
Oh, I went to the mountains last year. I think this year you should decide. Paul, drink your milk, don't drink.
The lake would be nice. Wouldn't you like to wet your toesies, Julie?
Lake would be lovely. Nice and cool with breezes blowing at night. Now we could sit outside and Paul could play his violin for us.
That's a fine vacation, listening to Paul fiddle.
No one is speaking to you, Victor. You eat your breakfast. Mitchy elbows. Of course, I did think if we should happen to go to the mountains again, I mean, not that I want to influence you, Anna, but if you should happen to choose the mountains, I thought perhaps would be a little extravagant and buy a camping outfit.
Camping? Geez, that would be great.
Of course, if you are sure that we could afford a camping outfit.
Then it's settled. We go to the mountains. Mitchy, you're cheap. I've got the catalog down at the bank.
Hey, that's my
Oh, Victor.
What is the meaning of this? Fighting at a table. Aren't you ashamed of yourselves? Who started it?
He took my toe.
That's no excuse to fight, Victor.
You're the oldest, Paul. You should set an example. You shouldn't have hit back.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I just wasn't thinking. You never think. You just dream and moon all the time.
That'll do, Victor. Paul dreams because he's a musician.
You do humor him on that account, Paul. If he grows up completely spoiled, it'll be your fault.
That settles it. Never shall it be said that I spoil any of my children. Finish your breakfast, young man.
Just a moment, young man. An extra half-hour practice before you go to school. And
Oh, there's a picture of Irvin.
Oh, there's Irvin Talbot.
Yeah. He was a conductor, and he conducted the Paramount Studio Orchestra for many years. And as a matter of fact, in the silent days, he conducted, they had a symphony orchestra, well, not a symphony orchestra, it was a big concert orchestra at the Paramount Theater in New York. And and he conducted silent movies there, and then when sound came in, he moved out here. And he taught me to, see, I had to play the violin in this picture.
Oh,
This is a picture of me playing the violin.
And what picture is that again?
It's called The Way of All Flesh. And he played a waiter. That was, he was a famous Shakespearean actor in his late age. He's a lovely man. He played the waiter. And there's Gladys George, who played my mother. And I worked very hard to learn to play the violin for this scene. And Irvin taught me. I would go to his house at night, in the evening, and he'd teach me. And then the day I was to shoot it, I came on the set, and there was a boy in my costume holding a violin. And I went up to the assistant director and I said, "What's going on?" And he said, "That's your double." And I said, "I don't want a double." And he said, "You have to have a double." And I said, "No, I don't." And I went to the director, Louis King. I said, "Mr. King, you have to let me do this. I worked so hard on it." So he said, "I'll give you one take." And we did it in one take.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have another treat tonight. Paul Creaser Jr., the talented son of our esteemed friend, the cashier of our bank, will play a violin solo. And his mother has kindly consented to accompany him on the piano. What are you going to play?
I'm going to play my father's favorite song. Your favorite, Papa.
Mr. Tweezer. Nothing more. You want it on the telephone, sir. It's Mr. Hansel of the bank. He says it's very important. Mr. Hansel? The bank? Well...
What's the matter, Papa?
You must go home. Wait there. I check.
Your first kiss with Darla Hood was in a cemetery in Santa Rosa. I
Yes.
just want to make sure I can.
Well, we were on vacation for a happy ending, and we bicycled up to the cemetery, and we were sitting under a tree, and suddenly I just was taken with the idea of kissing her and feel a little stimulation.
Oh
it was my very first.
Wait,
She
stop.
later turned on me. We became very good friends, and then we came back to Hollywood and the picture was over. And she came to the school I went to. Her mother put her, she wanted to go to the same school, a professional school for kids who were in movies. It was long. It was an old house, the street next to Gardner, there on Hollywood Boulevard. We were crossing Hollywood Boulevard together, and a car came over the hill. And I grabbed her because the car was coming fast, and she pulled back and said, "Please don't you dare grab me like that." And I said, "Get in, it wouldn't." And the car hit her. Suddenly it became my fault, and she said, "It's your fault." And I said, "Oh, you pulled back from me." She pulled back. I was trying to pull her onto the curb, and she pulled back, and that's how she got hit. And I didn't.
Wow, the car must have gone fast.
And she said, that I had rushed forward and to escape the car, and she let her be hit.
Papa.
And her mother took her out of the school, and we never spoke again. We were shooting in Healdsburg, which was a town near Santa. We shot it, all the exteriors of the picture were shot in Santa Rosa during the war. And Santa Rosa is a town above San Francisco, kind of an old-fashioned town. And there were old-fashioned houses, and we got to go up there and spend over 3 months shooting this picture. They wanted a town square in the movie, and there wasn't one in Santa Rosa, but there was a little town called Healdsburg, which was close by, and so we shot there. And there was a scene at the end of the movie where I come out of a drugstore with John Amici as my father, and who played my mother, I can't remember at the moment. And we walked out of the store, and then that was a dissolve. That was the end of the scene. And when there's a dissolve, they need some action to go on while the dissolve takes place. They hired a lot of people as extras to walk down the street, real townspeople. And there was this woman showed up with her daughter. So my mother, with me, and also Dora Hood's mother did not come on the location. My mother was kind of acting as her mother for the thing, kids. And so the woman kind of attached herself to my mother and said, my daughter is very clever and she wants to be an actress. This little tiny thing. Would you speak to the director? And so my mother asked Irving. Irving Pitchell was the director. He was a friend.
Irving Pitchell.
Irving Pitchell.
Oh, I love him as well.
Oh, you know who he was?
Of course.
He was an actor as well as a director, but a very good director. And he said, okay, bring her on, I'll look at her. And so this little girl came in, they got the idea. They were just ready to shoot this dissolve as we came out of the drugstore. And he got the idea of having the little girl standing outside the drugstore holding an ice cream cone, and the ice cream had fallen out or something. And she was crying. And said to the little girl, can you do that? And the little girl said yes. And so they shot it, and it worked out. Everybody applauded because this little thing, she did it right the first time. Her name is Gert, but she changed it to Natalie Wood when they came to Hollywood. She came to Hollywood Irving talked to the mother and the daughter, and he called my mother after we were back a couple of months after the picture was finished, wrapped. And he said to my mother, did I tell that woman to bring her child to Hollywood? And my mother said, well, you almost did, Irving. Yes, you said if you ever come down here, look me up. And he said, well, they're here and they're saying in a hotel and they expect me to get her in pictures and do the whole thing. And he was gay and he was sympathetic towards a family. He was very good at that. Really a lovely person. And he took it very seriously. When my mother said, yeah, you kind of did, Irving. And so he helped her, and he got her a part in the picture and started her career. Wilshire and La Brea, and was owned by the Larson, father of the Larsons who started the Magic Castle. This was their father. He had this magic store. I was going to go there, and I went on the bus in those days. I was, 15 years old, 14 years old. And so I thought the buses were very crowded. And if I got on the bus, instead of taking the bus along Sunset Boulevard to La Brea and then transferring and going out to Wilshire, if I got on the bus that came up Vine Street, went on Hollywood Boulevard through La Brea and then out, I could get on when it was practically empty and it would go along Hollywood Boulevard. By that time it would be crowded, but I'd get a seat. So I went down to Vine Street. I got on, it was called the Crenshaw La Brea bus. I got on the bus, nobody was on, coming up Vine Street to Hollywood Boulevard. And as it started to do the left turn onto Hollywood Boulevard from Vine Street, World War II ended. And people ran out into the street, screaming and yelling, and it was like people being in Times Square when the European War ended. Everybody wanted to be at Hollywood and Vine when this war ended. And the bus could not continue. It was stranded in the middle of the street. I have a photograph of the bus stranded in the middle of the street, unable to complete the turn. I was panicked. There were like 4 people on the bus. I said to the driver, open the door, I've got to get off. He said, I'm not going to open the door in the middle of the street. I can't do that. You have to sit here. So I had to wait until he was able to turn, and I stayed on the bus. I got out to Wilshire Boulevard. Mr. Larson had closed up his store and gone home. So I had his home address, and I called him, a lowly home down on Olympic Boulevard. And I told him what I needed, and he said, I have some here, come by. So I took the bus along Olympic to Longridge. I went up to his house, and I got my stuff, and I got back to and I thought, gee, this is going to be a great day. Best time I've ever had. I've done my Magic Act many times here and also in San Francisco at the Canteen, but this is the end of the war. It's going to be great. I sat in the booth until midnight, and I never got on. Every minute, some big star would come in. One of them was Jolson, and we all said, oh God, Jolson is here. Nobody is going to get on for the next hour, and it's true. He just sang one number after another. Wow. The soldiers were ordered, and every 45 minutes they'd empty out and bring in a whole new, because people were lined up, soldiers were lined up for blocks to get in. They'd give them 45 minutes, empty them out at one door, and then fill up the place with guys who were waiting. God. And Jolson stayed and sang for the new group, and he just wouldn't go. Jack Benny came, Burns and Allen came, Jimmy Durante was there. I remember Bill Bendix came in, he put on an apron and splashed some water on, and then went on the stage and said, "I've been in the back washing dishes." And by midnight, I called my mother and I said, "Come and get me because I was never going to get on." Because the guy kept saying, "Well, you'll get on in just a minute," and then somebody else would come in and they'd have to put him on.
Catherine O'Rourke.
His name. He was a famous vaudeville actor, and he was an old man. And he was a dirty old man. He took her down and had a bracelet welded to her ankle so she couldn't get it off with his name on it.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
And then she left him, and he was peering into her house from a neighbor's driveway, and the neighbor called the police, and the police took him into custody and took him downtown, and she followed and came, and there was on the front page of the Times the next morning. When I went to the first time in 1947, I stayed in an apartment on 16th Street, and across the street was a park. It was so hot, I went down to the park at night and couldn't read because there was no light. So I went up to Hammaker Schlemmer and I bought a Coleman lamp, a Coleman mantle lamp. And then I found I couldn't buy gas for it. I had to take the subway over to New Jersey City, because they couldn't sell white gas in the city of New York. It was illegal. They didn't tell me that when I bought the thing until so I took the subway over to that day to Jersey City, and I went to a gas station and I bought a tin can full of white gas, and I came back. And that night I took my mantle lamp down to the park and hung it on a tree and sat reading, and people were all around me, all with their books and stuff. And they were and the next night I did it. Then I found out what New Yorkers are like, because about the fourth night I didn't. Something happened and I didn't. Then when I went back the next night, they were a raging mob. "Where were you last night? You didn't bring your alarm down." And I thought, it's in the garage. I carried it across the country with me when I came back from New York. Little green mantle lamp, has a silk mantle, and is very bright. I was in the Army, actually. I was on 30 days leave before I went to Korea. And my agent got a call. Sam Golden wanted to see me. Well, I hadn't been in pictures for 5 or 6 years, and I had retired, and I even let my membership in SAG lapse because I wasn't working anymore. I didn't want to. I decided I'm not going to act anymore. But I thought a call from Sam Golden, I better go down and see what it is down in Santa Monica. And he had seen me in Happy Land, and he thought I'd be right for part of the picture he was doing with Farley Granger and somebody else. But I was then a child, and now I'm a man, because I've grown up and I'm sold. He said, "Well, you're not right for this part, but I'll give you something. You ought to be on the picture for a day or two." And I said, "Well, all right." But it cost me more to get back in the actors
than you were going to make.
I think from the picture, so it didn't work out. And I was really an extra. There was a scene in a picture where the girl had a party, and all her friends were there and all doing the jitterbug. And I couldn't jitterbug. But I said to the director, David Mayer, I said to the director, "Why don't I tend the phonograph? I'll be the DJ, yes." And he said, "Okay, that's fine." And I did that, and the girl joined me because she didn't jitterbug either. And he started the shot with us on the record. and then pulled back, and everybody was jitterbugging, but we were just standing there doing the record. And but Natalie Wood was in the movie, and I saw her on the set one day, and she came running over to me and said hi, and so I hadn't seen her in some years.
Wow.
And her mother came up, and her mother said, "Natalie, go to your trailer." And Natalie said, "Okay." And I said, "Don't you remember the mission?" Because my mother bent over backwards to help this woman when she was first here with her child. Irving asked her to. We helped her find an apartment. Actually, I think she and Natalie stayed at our house for a couple of days until they found an apartment.
Yeah.
And we saw quite a bit of them. And Mrs. Gordon said, "We don't like to think of those days," and turned around. She pushed Natalie. She was a typical Hollywood mother type.
Or is that a
Yeah, that's Korea.
What's Korea?
That's Bobby Waterman. You remember Bobby
Oh,
Waterman?
I remember. He hired me to do voiceover work.
Yes, that's right, he did.
I did voiceovers for him. Bobby Waterman.
Now there's the guy who almost killed me, and there's the fellow who worshipped him because he'd been a high school sports reporter on the Times-Picayune in Louisiana.
Yeah, New Orleans.
New Orleans, yeah.
That was an exciting night for me. We were out in the mountains and it was below zero on December 24th, 1951. There were quite a few Catholic boys there, and they had their mass, and I just played chords, and he was very pleased. It was just a little, tiny little collapsible keyboard, but he wanted some music, and nobody knew how to play. And I wasn't very good, but I was better than nothing. Going in and out, I played "Geez You Joy" because I knew that. Da la 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 la. You know it.
Yes, of course.
Then I went back to our tent, and while I was doing that, the rest of the boys had a party and got drunk.
Ah.
And one fellow took out a gun and was going, and I knew something was up. I walked in the tent, and he was playing with this gun. And I said to somebody else who was there, I said, give that to you. And he went over and he wouldn't do it, he wouldn't lend it. So I went next door. We had a work tent next door to the sleeping tent. So I went in the work tent and I called the MPs to come, and there was a shot. And then there was another shot. And the MPs came right away and they got him, and he was just drunk and he was playing with it and he shot. But one of the bullets went through the tent right where I was sitting calling. I had just left calling the MPs at my desk. I was at my desk and you had to call them on the rotary. And I got up to walk out when the shot happened. And we traced the bullet. It went through the tent and right past where I was sitting. I would have had it. As I said, that was an exciting night. Oh, yes, that's right. The fellow I talked to, I said, "Get the gun away from him." And he was not a friend of mine. He was a football player. And he tried to kill me once. He backed me against a tent pole and gave me a punch. And I ducked. And he hit the tent pole and the whole tent fell down. Oh, he was a mess. I said, "Get the gun away from him," because he was over there at the end of the tent. And he did. He said, "Let me have your gun." He had it a minute, and the fellow said, "I want it back." And he handed it back to him. And I said, "You dumb buddy." That's when I decided I'd better call the MPs, call the police. And as I said, I went next door and I called. And then as I got up, I heard this shot, and then there were two shots, and one of them went right through the sleeping tent and through the work tent. It made holes right where I've been seated.
In Korea, and a lot of people were hurt, shot up, and I survived, and so did he, and we were one of the few survivors of the thing. And when I was able to, I had him transferred to my unit. His father owned a liquor store here in Los Angeles. He was Mexican descent, and he was a nice kid. And I felt sorry for him and we were both survivors of this incident. But I was taken, he was offline and so was I. And I had him transferred to my unit as a reporter. He couldn't write his own name, but But it turned out he was an artist, and he made this Christmas card for me to send to my mother as a thank you. And some friends of Danny and Azalea's had it blown up recently.
And it's right there.
And it's hanging there.
Banana split for my baby, a glass of plain water for me. Banana split for my baby, a glass of plain water for me. Dispenser man, if you please, serve my chick a mess of calories. Banana split for my baby, a glass of plain water for me.
After Korea, James returned to Hollywood in his writing career. He rented an apartment on Flory Street and rekindled his writing partnership with Jack DeWitt. The film they had begun work on shortly before James left for the war, The Battles of Chief Pontiac, was released in 1953 by Monogram Pictures and co-starred childhood friend and acting partner Helen Westcott. In 1957, James was tapped as writer for the screenplay of Hey Boy, Hey Girl, starring Louis Prima and Keely Smith. As the film was to follow a day in the life of the singing duo, James was brought to Las Vegas and stayed at the Sahara, where Louis and Keely performed. His future wife, Jerry Nolan, was publicity director at the El Rancho Vegas just blocks away. Producer-writer Stan Irwin, who penned the lyric for A Banana Split for My Baby, was dating Jerry at the same time he pitched the song to James, who helped get it placed in the film.
Separate checks, it must be. Charge the split to her, the water to me. Oh, the banana splits for my baby, and the glass of plain water's for me. Ain't got no money, the glass of plain water's for me.
I was blacklisted for 5 minutes. I was at Universal, and we were doing a show for NBC, and my producer, Bill Warren, was told, you can't use him. And Bill said, why? Because he's a commie. And Bill knew me, and he said, he's not a commie. He told them that I wasn't, and they made a mistake or something. And I got a call on a Sunday morning. We were still in the apartment, we hadn't moved here yet. I got a call from a fellow in New York at NBC, and he was investigating my case for NBC to find out if I should be blacklisted. Because I had been, and I was told I couldn't work there anymore and stuff. And he said, Mr. West, do you own a chain of grocery stores in New England? And I said, I've never been to New England, and I don't own a chain of grocery stores anywhere. Turns out there was a James West, who was a contributor to the Communist Party, who owned a chain of grocery stores in New England. So when they got the name James West appeared, I was in red channels and I was unemployable. And he was very nice, and the thing was dropped. But if Bill hadn't gone to bat for me, if it had just been an ordinary producer who said, well, okay, I would have been fired without knowing why. Nobody would have told me. It's only because Bill went to bat.
Yeah. They decided that the family was very limited because the children ate the soup, but Mommy bought the soup. And they wanted us to have somebody with a little more sex appeal running the Lassie. So we got a forest ranger instead. And we had to get rid of the family. What to do with the family. And I had just joined the show at the time. I think it was my second season with it. And I said, send them to Australia. You cannot take a dog to Australia. The Lassie cannot go to Australia. They'll have to part with her. And that's what we did. We had a whole show where the family He buys a farm in Australia, they have to go, and then they discover horror, they cannot take Lassie. And Lassie's turned over to a farm drinker. And I must say, Campbell's was right, it helped really shot him. It's the only time in my career where I had a program that was #1 in the nation that week, the Nielsen. That's when we had the same spot, the 60 Minutes now occupied, 7 o'clock Sunday night. That was a big thing for a little show like Lassie to be #1 in the country.
We'll be together again.
Hi, Danny. This is Mommy. I'm calling you on the telephone. Oh, that's wonderful. Are you having fun with Daddy?
Who's that? Here, try it again now. She's very interested.
Hello, Danny. This is Mommy. Hi, Danny.
Did you hear that?
Yes.
She said, hi, Mom.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you. It was more for me than anything.
We used to have blue jays here like crazy when we first moved here. As a matter of fact, we had a little pomegranate tree right outside the window here. And blue jays built a nest right in the tree, right outside our window. And we watched this lady sit on there and had her little family. Daddy came and they did the whole thing right in front of our window. And at the time, we were waiting to start our family. And Jerry was waiting for Daddy. Daddy hadn't come. She'd sit there and there was this lady, Blue Jay, and she was having her family and we were waiting for ours.
A stick, a stone, it's the end of the road. It's the rest of a stump, it's a little alone. It's a sliver of glass, it is life, it's the sun. It is night, it is death, it's a trap, it's a gun. The oak when it blooms, a fox in the brush. The nod of the wood, the song of a thrush. And the riverbank talks of the waters of March. It's the end of the strain, it's the joy in your heart.
My name is Geraldine West, and I'm calling for the Volunteer Bureau. I write the little column that we have in the Tuesday paper for the Green Sheet, and I wondered if you had a minute to give me some information.
I'll be loving you always, with a love that's true, always. When the things you've planned need a helping hand, I will understand always, always, always.
Well, thank you for bringing me all the stuff yesterday. It was really very sweet of you. And I love the grabber that says Happy Valentine's Day, Papa West. It's awfully sweet, cute of you, but I think it should also say James West because as an identification, Papa West nobody would know who that is. So we may want to put a thing that says James West on that. And aside from that, I can't think. Oh, yes, the other thing I have to ask you about is I can freeboard. What do I owe them $160 for? Let me know when you have a chance. Okay, that's about all today, except to say thank you both for coming and for being so sweet and bringing me candy and all the lovely things you do for me. We'll talk later. Love you. Bye-bye.
They will light.
Jump in, I like.
Way tonight. I'll see you in my
I love that song.
The more I read the papers, the less I comprehend the world and all its capers, and how it soon will end.
Nothing seems to be lasting, but that isn't our affair.
We've got something permanent, I mean in the way we care. It's very clear our love is here to stay. Not for a year, but ever and a day. The radio and the telephone and the movies that we know may just be passing fancies, and in time may go. But oh my dear, our love is here to stay. Together we're going a long, long way. In time the Rockies may crumble, Gibraltar may tumble, they're only made of clay. But our love is here to stay.